Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a box called Bank from Hack the Box. This is rated as an easy machine, and it's fairly easy. It's a Linux machine. Definitely, there's two ways of exploiting the system and getting a shell. This machine is definitely a great box for people who are beginners and trying to get their feet wet. As I'm preparing for the OSCP, I'm trying to do as many boxes as possible and definitely realize that the biggest challenge for me is trying to get into that try harder mantra or motto, and I definitely need to get better with that and definitely try harder. So this is definitely one of those machines that well, that's the reason why I've been doing a lot of hack the box lately. But let's get started. So the first thing that I did was run my recon script, and as we can see, there's three ports: SSH, DNS, and 80 HTTP. So just to get things started, I actually added um, a domain called bank.htb for my Etsy hosts, and the reason why was because when I originally ran the FF scan, as I'm going to show here, with the IP, it actually won't pick up any directories. So let's so you'll notice in this scan, in this FF scan, that you won't see any directories, but because DNS is active on this machine, that gave me a sign that okay, maybe let's try adding a host name, a random host name. It doesn't even have to be bank.htb. It could be anything, literally. It could be money.htb, and it will resolve that domain. So definitely that's a good tip to understand, is that anytime you see port 53, just go to your Etsy host and add your domain. So what I did was I just added it right here. So when I did that, I actually got more results, as I will show you in a little bit. So in the meantime, I'm actually going to go and show you the page. So we can do 10.10.10.29. And as you can see, we get a default web page. So I strongly recommend, anytime you're looking at these web pages, look at the source code, because developers may leave comments in here that they don't think that will be seen by other people. And it could be something, it could give us a name or a username, something that we can use later on. But from the looks of this, there's nothing here. So the next thing is to look at those directories, but I'm also going to use dig, and this is called a zone transfer. So basically, because I have a domain and DNS running, I decided to check out this do a zone transfer, which will be able to get files that are set up on this DNS server. And usually, if you want to do this on an actual domain, this at 10.10.10.29 would be the name servers that's related to this domain. But because this is a hack the box machine, the name server would just be the IP address and the domain that you provided. So when you hit enter, you will actually see different subdomains, right? But because this machine doesn't have any interesting subdomains, you won't see anything here. But if you do a machine like friend zone, hint hint, this will populate different things. So with that said, let's check out our FF scan. And usually, anytime I see a server status, I can kind of infer that there's really no more directories. This is the last one. So I'm just going to stop it here, and I'm actually going to say no, I don't want to run this scan. So let's clear this out, and let's actually run FF scan by using the domain that I provided it. And as you can see, immediately you get hits for different um, directories. So let's go and check it out. So we'll go to http bank.htb, and we get a login page. So as soon as we got this login page, I actually try to do default credentials, admin, nothing. I try to do admin, a little SQL injection, and nothing. I also try to run SQL map and with the request, and most of the times, if these type of things are susceptible to SQL injection, SQL map will pick it up, but it didn't, so I could tell the SQL injection was just not gonna happen. So I moved on, and I decided to, okay, I'm gonna let ff keep running, so I'm gonna use sudo nmap, and I'm gonna run this script vuln, which I always like to do just as an added precaution of just different vulnerability scripts that are within nmap. So now I'm also gonna try to run nicto, and now nicto, it will take a long time just because it's nicto. Um, but in the meantime, I'm gonna try and keep looking for other directories. So let's see what we have here. So we have an uploads directory, which definitely looks interesting. So let's try and see what it will find. And we get a 403 forbidden, but from here, from this ff scan, it just tells us it's a 301, which is a redirect to a 403. So let's look at the support.php. And that actually gives us a redirect to the login page. So this is actually one of the two ways that you can get a not root shell, a shell onto the system. So I'm going to show you while my ff scan is actually still running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this, I'm going to do burp, and I actually decided to do intercept responses because we'll need to actually intercept the response from the redirect. So let's run this again with support.php. And as you can see, it's going to send a get request. So it's going to get something from the server. So we'll forward that. And now you can see it gets a 302 found. But when you look at this redirect, you can actually see there's actually content here. So this is where I kind of was like, okay, how do I read this? Because I sent it to to repeater, and I tried to open it up through the browser, but it was giving me that redirect. So next, you can actually use burp and do whatever you want to it. So instead of that 302 redirect, I actually said, okay, give me that 200 OK status, and it's basically gonna ignore that 302, that redirect to the login page, and boom, we actually get what this support.php page is, and it shows us that we can choose a file and submit it. Now we're gonna get back to this, but basically here you can upload a reverse shell and get shell on your machine, but it won't let you. The reason why is because this only accepts images. So I'm actually we'll come back to this, and we'll see how we bypass that. So what we can do is I'm just gonna drop all this. I'm gonna turn intercept off, turn burp suite off, and redirect. Use that, and our ff scan has actually finished, and we see that there's this balance transfer. This doesn't look like a regular PHP Apache directory, so I'm going to check it out. And definitely, it's always good to check out these different directories. Take your time, take a deep breath, and look at everything. Try to eliminate everything that you get until you have no other choice. So don't quit after support.php and say, okay, I can't figure this out. You still have upload to assets. There's something in here that you can use. So definitely don't give up and try to exhaust all these resources that you have. So we have this balance, right? Balance transfer. So I open this page and we see it's a bank status and it's encrypted. Okay. So this looks base 64 and using a tool called CyberChef, I actually try to see if we can decode it and it's gibberish. So basically what I was able to conclude was this is this looks base 64 but from it is encrypted. So let's look and see if there's something else that I can conclude. Okay, that says encryption is the same. Okay, encrypt success and so on. So what I decided to do was, and also because I was stuck in this area and I looked at a write-up, was there's this part right here where it says, okay, encrypt success, they all have this in common, right? Which basically means, okay, the encryption was success. But is there, what if something was not a success? So maybe there's a file within here that it it was not, the encryption failed. So what we can do is we can actually, like I said, exhaust all our resources. So exhausting all our resources means to go and look at all of this information. But there's too much information here that it would take a lot of time to manually go one by one and look. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just get all this. So I'm going to create a directory, make directory balance, and I'm going to use wget. The R stands for recursive, and it's going to get everything from this directory. So it's going to take a little bit of time, so just bear with me. And in the meantime, let's look at this Nikto scan, see if it picked up anything, and it did. So it tells us that the Apache server is outdated. There's really not any exploit or remote code execution that we found for this version. Now, it does tell us that there's a login.php admin page. Okay. There's no CGI directory, so we really can't do like a shell shock attack. There is this default files found. So there's really not that much information from this Nikto scan, so we can discard it. So now we go back to this file, well, this terminal, and what we can do now is we can see that there's a bank.htb. So let's just go to bank.htb, and we go back to the balance transfer, and now this is all our files that we found. So now if you remember, there's that okay encryption. So let's see if there's a file in here that maybe that encryption that failed, and see maybe all those files are the same. But again, let's try to exhaust all our resources and let's try to just discard every possibility, because what that's that hacker mentality, is trying to exhaust all our resources, all our information until we can't do anything else. So a good command is, I'm just going to use grep. So I'm going to use grep tag l, which basically means look into the file, into each of these files, and discard this. So basically I want files to pop that do not have encryption success, because this will mean that either the file is different than almost all the files that we found, and either it could be that it's not encrypted or it's just formatted differently. We don't know, but let's check it out. So we run that and we get in all these index files, but as you can see here, we actually get one account file that's completely different. So let's run gedit and see what's up. And you see here the first line, it says error, encryption failed, and boom, you see that we have Chris at bank.htb's phone, email and his password. Great. Now we have access to his, now we can actually log in. So let's just do that then. So let's do Chris. So we'll do Chris at bank.htb and his password. And boom, now we're in. So now what we can do is, remember how we got that support.php redirect? Well, let's just click that here. And now we have more of a nicer web page because of that CSS. So now if you stopped at the first try when we got the burp suite, or if you continued on, now I said that we're going to see how we can bypass that image file upload. So anytime you get this type of web page, it's always great practice, always something that you should get in the habit of, is looking at the page source. Any any web page, even if you're like on youtube.com or Google or whatever, always look at the page source. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just code. But and you see some comments, and there's this comment here: debug, I added the file extension .htb to execute as PHP for debugging purposes only. Okay, so this is a huge light bulb, because now all we have to do is basically rename anything .php to HTB and it will execute. So what I did was I was actually trying to figure out ways of injecting a executable into an image and uploading that. I was overcomplicating this situation, so this made it a lot easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just go back to my main desktop, and I'm going to move my shell.php to, well, I'm actually going to copy it. So copy shell.php to shell.htb. I'm going to set a netcat listener, and we're going to upload this. So we'll do test. This is a test. We'll go here. We'll upload the file and we'll hit submit, and great, success. So now we're going to execute it, and boom, now we're executed. So now we have a reverse shell, and anytime you have a reverse shell, I strongly suggest you do the following command. First, let's check if there's Python installed, and there is. So now I'm going to do Python tag C for command, import pty.spawn bin bash. And now the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to do export term is equal to x term. Now we're going to foreground this, and we're going to do stty raw tag echo foregrounded. So what this is going to allow us is going to make this terminal, now we won't be able to use this like a regular terminal on this side, because now we can actually use the clear command and use our arrow keys, and now we have a full shell. So now what we're going to do is we're id, so we're dub data, so let's go to cd home ls cd chris user.text, so we can now cat the user.text, and we have the file create. So now we're in. So now what we're going to be doing is let's prevesc. So let's see if we can prevesc. There's nothing interesting in here, so what we can't read the bash history. So my other favorite place to look is the -var -www data. So let's do cd -var. Let's go cd www, and there's a bank, so we can do cd bank ls tag la, and there's different files in here that looks similar to the files that we have already found on our FFscan, except that bank reports.txt. So let's see what that is about. Bank reports.txt, and it's just our username and password for the system. So what I did was I'm gonna try and actually see if maybe this user uh, has used reuses password. Most of the time, people reuse passwords, and no, it hasn't. So the next thing is I'm actually gonna upload my lim piece. So we're gonna do. So I'm gonna use sudo python 3 http, and then we're do wget http and your IP address. It's gonna get that. I'm gonna make this an executable, and we'll execute this. And what this is going to do is going to be a great way to find anything that we can privesc or use to for privesc. This is limpiece is definitely my go-to script for any for just enumeration. There's also winpiece. Winpiece is also very good. But when it comes to Linux, any any privesc automated scripts, as you can see here, I don't have just one, I have many because most of the time one script may not catch something. So it's always good to, okay, go maybe to the next script and so on. Like I said, all about exhausting your resources. Try to use everything that you know that and you can, and then if you can't figure anything out, then try maybe asking for help or looking at the write-ups or trying to get maybe look at the use Google, and it's definitely okay to use Google. I use Google because I'm still learning. That's the whole point of this channel and trying to learn and trying to get better. So definitely there's no shame in that. So but this script is actually going to take a little bit of time, but in the meantime let's look at maybe what it picked up. So it's running Linux version 4.4.0. It is red, but it's not nothing that's 99%. But just an FYI, be careful when you do Linux kernel exploits. The reason why is because I've done Linux kernel exploits before that it actually crashed the box, so I had to actually reset the machine. So definitely be careful. These should definitely be a like last resort kind of thing if you have nothing else. But um yeah, so I'm gonna keep looking at and see what else we can find. There's really nothing. There's just interfaces. There's super user. There's user Chris. Mm, there's no MySQL connection. Oh, here it is. So there's actually the Etsy password is writable, and now it's highlighted, which means it's a 99% exploitable thing. Okay, so let's check this out. So let's go to we can use ls tech la Etsy password, and it is writable by us. So basically, what Etsy password is, it's a list of users that are on the system. But the reason why this should never be actually writable because it can be exploited, and we'll just like how we're going to exploit now and get read access. But the passwords actually were actually not kept in the Etsy password or Etsy passwd. They're actually kept in the Etsy shadow files, which definitely should not be accessed by anyone because you can change a root password hash to something else. But yeah, so the way that we're going to exploit this is actually we're going to use we're going to Google um, exploit Etsy password right file. And hacking articles is a phenomenal resource for these type for different exploits. So basically, I recommend you can read all through this. Definitely a lot of great resource. But what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna actually create a user. I tried I tried changing the password for root to an asterisk, which basically means no password. But that actually requires you to use the passwd command to set a new password. But because that password set is stored in the etc shadow file, you can't overwrite that. So the next thing to do is create a whole different user and give that user root privileges. So this is what we're going to be doing. So we're going to create user 2 star and different. We're going to give them, instead of the user ID being 1002 and 1003, we're going to give them 00 root access. So then whenever we log into that user, they're going to be root. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to use vim, so vi etc passwd, and I'm actually going to go down all the way down here. And sorry about my vim being a little weird. It's just because I haven't really set the terminal sizes, but yeah. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to call it. I'm going to use user. I'm actually going to say san. Nope, did not mean to do that. So I'm going to use Santi. I'm going to put here an asterisk because again, there's no password, so we'll set that later. 00, and then we'll use root dash root bin bash, and that's it. So let's just double check. Yep, looks the same. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to hit escape, :w quit, exclamation point, and let's just double check with tail etc password just to see if everything's in there. And it does freeze a little. There we go. So let's see. Yep, everything's in there. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to actually use a command that's called PASWD Santi. So what this is going to be doing is we're going to be trying to create a whole new password for the user, but you can't. So another way, thanks to, again, this amazing resource, Hacking Articles, there's another way that we could create a password, and it's called using OpenSSL. So we'll just follow this command, OpenSSL passwd -1 -salt, our username, and the password. So let's do that. OpenSSL passwd -1 -salt, Santi for the username, and the password I'm just going to put password. Actually, yeah, I'm just going to use password. Boom. And now we have this hash. So let's just copy this hash. We'll go back to VI or Vim, whatever you like to use, and we'll go all the way down here to our user. And instead of this asterisk, what we're going to be using is we're just going to copy and paste that. Going to escape it, just like we did previously. We'll use less. Let's use tail. Make sure everything's there. Yep, it looks like everything's written there. So now what we can do is switch user Santi password ID, and boom, we are now root. So now what we can do, we can actually go to the root directory, cat root.txt, and boom, we have our root password. So we have successfully overwritten the etc password, created a new user of our choice, given him the user ID and the group ID of root, and now anytime that we can log in as the root user. So you kind of understand now why having the etc password, well, etc passwd and etc shadow files being writable by any user is completely dangerous, because anyone with even the lowest privileges can access can become root immediately because we were logged in as dub and dub data did not have any pseudo privileges, so he couldn't. That user could not have escalated their privileges anyway. I mean, maybe we did a kernel exploit, but because we didn't do that and we had that super easy path, we were able to get root quickly. But yeah, that's the whole box. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.